你说他咋活呀？还有他这个成家的问题，以后他要是找女朋友，你说他如何跟他的女朋友解释他这个事是咋造成这样大的打击？
包括那个处女膜，它为啥是完整的？你说强奸处女案呀，强奸完了，你看你这个衣服咋脱的？你衣服你就完好无损啊，一点点破损的痕迹也没有啊。那女方上交的那个内裤没有清洗过的内裤，上交上去没有鉴定了我孩子的 DNA 呀。
哎，这个社会奇葩的事情越来越多了。山西大同的订婚强奸案，你们都刷到的吧？
Sigh, the absurd things happening in society these days are really getting out of hand. Have you guys seen that shocking case from Datong, Shaanxi, where an engagement suddenly turned into a rape accusation? It's honestly beyond comprehension, and the more you look into the details, the more chilling it becomes. Here's what happened. The man and the woman had already gotten engaged. According to the woman's demands, the man gave 100,000 yuan as an engagement bride price, and also gave 2 gold rings. But right after that, things started getting complicated. The woman began to raise all sorts of additional conditions, and shockingly, the engagement agreement drafted by her family explicitly stated, if the man breaks off the engagement, not a single cent of the bride price or the rings would be returned, but if the woman breaks it off unilaterally, only half of the bride price would be refunded. Now tell me, wasn't this a setup from the very beginning? Besides that, there was another major issue, adding the woman's name to the property deed. The woman explicitly demanded that the marital home must have her name on the ownership. At first, the man actually agreed to this condition. But later, after discussing with his family, he felt maybe it would be more prudent to wait until after the marriage, or even after having a child, before adding her name to the deed. Who would have thought that this change immediately triggered the woman's dissatisfaction? What's even more disheartening are the details mentioned by the man's mother. She stated that when the 2 young people were still on good terms, the woman often visited the new house with the man, laughing and joking together, even engaging in physical teasing and using flirty, suggestive language to provoke him. Moreover, the man's mother added that, to this day, there are still clothes and strands of hair left by the woman in the marital home. Yet, despite these potentially critical pieces of physical evidence, the police didn't collect any of it during the investigation. Then, the plot took a sharp and dramatic turn. After all these conflicts had accumulated, the woman suddenly accused the man of rape. As a result, the police got involved, and so did forensic experts, and a whole bunch of suspicious points emerged. First of all, the woman's hymen was found to be intact. Second, there were no bruises, no signs of struggle, and not even any torn clothing on her body. And on top of that, the court even examined the woman's underwear, which showed no trace of the man's DNA. But despite such a flawed and hole-ridden accusation, the man was still sentenced to 3 years in prison on the charge of rape. Now tell me, isn't this utterly absurd? Is this truly about punishing evil and promoting justice, or is it just using the law to create new wrongful convictions? What's even more chilling is that many women online are saying, forget engagements, even after marriage, if the woman doesn't consent, and the man forces himself on her, that still counts as rape. If that's the case, then doesn't our country's marriage system have a serious legal loophole? If a marriage certificate can't even protect the basic rights between husband and wife at a critical moment, then what's the point of it? Is it nothing more than a fragile piece of paper that offers zero real protection in married life? And in stark contrast, those women who are truly suffering from domestic violence often report it again and again, yet no one pays attention and no one stands up for them. So does that mean, from now on, if a woman is experiencing domestic abuse, instead of saying he hit me, she should just say he raped me, because that would be more likely to lead to a formal case? This case in Datong, Shaanxi, forces us to reflect, with no solid evidence, no physical injuries, and no DNA proof, just a single accusation, a man can be sentenced to 3 years in prison? If this can be upheld, then almost any intimate act between husband and wife, once a conflict arises, could be redefined as a rape case. This is not about protecting women, this is about completely destroying the trust in marriage.
现在有些让人始料未及的强奸案。
Nowadays, some truly baffling rape cases have already begun sending out a signal. The era of fear for men may have officially arrived. Imagine a scenario. If your girlfriend gets drunk and suddenly initiates intimacy with you, what should you do as her partner? Doesn't that sound absurd? In the past, if someone asked this question, others might think he was paranoid or overthinking. But today, this is no longer a joke that can be taken lightly. With the ever-expanding and increasingly vague definition of rape, it has now almost become a form of indiscriminate punishment. It's no longer just about sexual violence between strangers, but could happen between couples or even spouses. You may think you're in a romantic relationship, and that intimacy is only natural. But in some extreme situations, with just one accusation from the woman, you could instantly turn from a beloved partner into a rape suspect, and the court may well accept her word alone. Why would she press charges? Maybe it was just an ordinary argument. Why didn't you buy me that necklace I liked the other day? Didn't I already say you need to add my name to the house title before we get married? In a fit of emotion, her anger and disappointment could turn into a formal accusation. What's more complicated is that some women may have already decided to leave you and find someone new. But fearing you'll cling on or try to stop her, she chooses the nuclear option. A call to the police, an accusation, and you could end up in jail for 3 years, your reputation in ruins. What can you even do? If you say no, she might instantly flip out. What's that supposed to mean? You're rejecting me? You're unwilling to be intimate with your own girlfriend? You don't love me anymore, do you? What should have been a romantic, intimate moment between lovers is now turned into a trial of repression and fear, thanks to the rift between morality and law. At this point, you're stuck in a dilemma. Say yes and you might get sued. Say no and you risk a storm of emotions or even a breakup. What once seemed like a moment of intimacy has now turned into a minefield. One wrong step and you're doomed beyond recovery. From a woman's perspective, there may be no malice at all. But from a man's point of view, once you realize how vague the current rape laws are and how heavily they lean one-sidedly, you can't help but feel fear. After all, if anything goes wrong, the only one who ends up hurt could be you. So what about trust in a relationship? We men also want to trust our partners, approach them without reservation, without fear. But the problem is, today's laws don't truly protect our most basic level of safety in this kind of relationship. They do not grant men the right to be trusted. Let's not even talk about the case where she's drunk. Even if she's sober now, I still wouldn't dare say yes so easily. If afterward she claims I hurt her, that she has some bruises, those could all become evidence for overturning the situation down the line. Do you know what that means? A minimum 3-year prison sentence, the same punishment as those demons who drag random women into bushes off the street and rape them. I'm her boyfriend. I'm not a criminal, not a thug. And yet now, every time I approach her, I have to be as cautious as signing a legal contract, as careful as preventing a fire. Maybe you think I'm being too extreme, too absurd. But go take a look at those real-life cases and you'll see, none of this is just wild imagination. It's a creeping, encroaching reality. Those laws that were meant to punish true criminals are now being used against the very people who least deserve it. Given all this, how can I still dare to love her freely, get close to her, and be the one she trusts the most?
现在很多男人都开始防着女人了。
Now, more and more men have begun to develop a strong sense of caution toward women. One major reason is, there are gold diggers everywhere, only after money. They open their mouths asking for high spending and high returns. And on top of that, the recent rape case in Datong, Shaanxi, which drew massive attention, has completely shattered women's credibility in the dating and marriage market, right? Originally, men might have still been willing to give, to invest in a woman who seemed genuinely good. But now, even if they meet a kind and sincere girl, they instinctively keep their distance and put up walls. They no longer trust easily like before, and they're no longer willing to hand over too much power or control in a relationship. Nowadays, these women who talk endlessly about emotional value, while calculating every move, are everywhere. Their very presence is destroying the basic foundation of trust between men and women. And the result is, men are gradually losing faith in women. So you see, male-female relationships are now rapidly sliding into a vicious cycle. A lot of men are truly afraid of women now.
唉，老公再有钱又能怎么样呢？你老公再有钱又能怎么样？
Sisters, sometimes you really need to understand, no matter how rich your husband is, that does not mean you are actually rich. If he earns a lot, but never hands the money over to you, then that money will never belong to you, got it? Only the money that ends up in your hands is truly yours. Looking back now, I was really so foolish, so naive. My husband has always had a pretty high salary, and because of the nature of his job, he often needed to attend social events, like dining with his boss, attending banquets, and he always said he needed to keep some cash on hand. I actually believed those things he said back then, and I never insisted that he hand over his entire paycheck to me. We each just spent our own money. He didn't ask me how I spent mine, and I didn't ask him about his. When something big came up, he would pay for it, and I thought that was fine, very respectful of boundaries. But now, looking back, I was really too naive. At that time, I wholeheartedly believed we were one family, both working hard for the same home, and it didn't matter who paid. But sisters, it's easy to say that, but what someone is truly thinking in their heart, you can never guess. If he never really saw you as family, then his money was never really meant for you. So now I really want to tell you one thing: no matter how rich your husband is, you must remember, make sure he gives all his money to you. Seriously, whether or not a man is willing to give his money to his wife, it really shows whether he truly loves you or not. Some men talk a good game, oh don't worry, all my money is yours, how could I possibly spend it on anyone else? But you have to remember, if the money is not in your hands, then it's not yours. No matter what he says, it's meaningless. Sisters, you really need to be aware of this. If one day you end up getting a divorce, and it comes time to divide the property, you'll finally realize, all those so-called shared assets, if they weren't in your hands to begin with, you won't get a single cent of it. By that time, who owns what will be completely unclear. Don't naively think he'll consider the children, or think of the family. In today's world, people's hearts are way too complicated. As women, we really need to be more mindful. It's not about becoming materialistic, it's that we women must protect ourselves, and we must leave ourselves a way out. In today's world, with all its glitz and temptation, if you don't stay alert, then you're just waiting to be taken advantage of.
Why are there so many tragedies in China caused by bride prices? It's gotten to the point where Chinese men are now afraid of women. This is all caused by human greed. I suggest that starting now, all bride prices in China should be immediately abolished. No more bride prices allowed, anywhere. If any bride price is discovered, file a lawsuit immediately and sentence them to more than 3 years in prison. Just try it. These problems will be solved instantly, including that rape case in Datong, Shaanxi. To be honest, I hope the sentence is heavier. Even heavier would be better. Why? Because a harsher sentence will completely wake up men, and they'll stop being simps. Chinese men must stand up. That's the only way to be powerful. From now on, Chinese men should form a men's union. If a man experiences unfair treatment, he can invest in a men's union. Right now, society only has a women's union, but there's no men's union. Only with both can there be mutual checks and balances and true equality. Men respect women, and women respect men. Only then can families be happy, and only then will we stop seeing so many tragedies. Remember this: if women treat men with serious unfairness, men will eventually fight back, just like women did. Why are women so aggressive nowadays? It's simple. Chinese women have suffered for over 2,000 years, from ancient times until now. So now they think it's their turn to make men suffer. Honestly, that's understandable. Throughout the cycles of history, men oppress women, and then women oppress men in return. But when will this cycle finally end? So, in a civilized society, we should rationally use the law to guide us. Men must respect women, and women must respect men. So I repeat my suggestion. Starting now, bride prices should be abolished entirely. No place should be allowed to demand them. The moment a bride price is found, file a lawsuit immediately and sentence them to more than 3 years in prison. Try it, and this fear that Chinese men have toward women will be solved right away. Do you agree with my point of view? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.